Hey y'all, this is David Ducker coming back at you, and today I'm going to be talking about my generic character sheet, the character sheet I start every character with, regardless of setting or system. I think that's a great thing to have because it lets you put your character down on paper in all the detail that you want or need before you have to worry about stats. Because so often people start with stats, they fall into the trap of optimization, and they make the same character that someone else has made before. And that sucks, because you lose all your originality, your personality, your unique appeal that you should have off the bat. So I encourage everyone to make a generic character sheet for themselves in the level of detail they want. For me, what this sheet looks like is it's got several categories. First, of course, the name of the character. Then we've got the appearance. What do they look like? So I describe the character as I envision them in my mind. Physically, hair, eyes, face, body type, clothing, equipment. What does it all look like? So appearance, then we go personality. What do they act like? And, just write a paragraph out on that. However you want to conduct yourself and the voice of that character. Now I write history. Where have they been? What have they done? This is usually the most exhaustive section for me. And I like to start, some people will break it down and they'll start, by age categories, like 0 to 5 years old, 5 to 10, 10 to 15. I'm not usually that specific. If you want to be, more power to you. So I usually start out kind of usually at the beginning of their professional career. Although at least half my characters, I'll go before that as well. It depends a little bit on the character. Because some people really just have a pretty fairly generic childhood, and all the exciting stuff happens afterwards. Some people are very deeply shaped by their childhood. So appearance, personality, history. So history is the past. The next section is goals, and that's the future. Where do I want to take this character? Where does this character want to take themselves? Where am I going to drive the plot towards? So when I send this to the GM, the backstory will be providing him with plot hooks that will come at me that he can use while I'm passive. The goals will be storylines I'm going to push on him. So he needs to pay attention to be prepared for this, because in this case, as a GM, he's going to be passive. I'm going to push it on him and push the pace so he doesn't have to railroad us. Because some GMs don't like to do it, some GMs are bad at it, some players don't like it when you do it to them, and when you railroad them. I don't mind being railroaded as long as it's the train that I want to take. As long as that railroad is heading to a destination I'm excited about, I don't mind a railroad at all. But and I'll go along with the railroad even if I don't want to be on it for a certain amount of time to a certain point. But I've seen some GMs that just railroad you into just in the middle of nowhere, and you're like, oh man, there's nothing here. The world is empty except for the railroad. It's just a world of railroad. There's no scenery going by. It's just this vast, blank, gray world. So I have to have my goals, and then I'll usually summarize plot hooks they can pull from the backstory. I'll usually summarize that in a separate paragraph. Excuse me. So, for example, let's bring back Brody Gunderson from the land of the Linorm Kings. His backstory: he was from the land of the Linorm Kings, and he was a really shitty warrior for that region. So they tried to make him a blacksmith, and he turned out to be a really shitty blacksmith as well. So they shipped him off to Taldor so he could become the bodyguard of the Prince of Taldor, because the prince didn't trust any locals to protect him. There's too much scheming and political intrigue, so he hired Huskarls from the land of the Linorm kings. My character was one of those. So that's his backstory. Now his goal, his backstory also included that assassins snuck by him, tried to kill the prince. They failed to do so, but my character was still disgraced and dismissed from the Huskarls. At the GM's option, the prince could have been killed. That would have been more interesting, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to force a big storyline on him. I'll force smaller ones, personal ones, but the murder of the prince, I mean, that could be a whole campaign. So, okay, that's his backstory. So, his goals now, you prove that these assassins used magic to sneak by him, and thus he was not dishonored. They were, in fact, dishonored by using magic. So that was his main goal, is to clear his honor and also to get revenge on these assassins. So now the GM can know to build this this League of Assassins, and he can know, if they did use magic, if they didn't, but he knows I'm going to pursue them and try to kill them. So for my plot hook section, that's all coming out of the backstory. So I wrote down for him, what if one of my fellows from the land of the Linorm kings came looking for me? What if they needed my help? Or what if one of them had been sent to execute me and end my dishonor, perhaps? I looked at, what if the assassins knew I was coming for them and they came after me first? What if my character could find some meteoric star metal because he's got the blacksmith skills? Actually, I'd mark that down as another goal, that he wanted to become a great swordsmith if he failed to be a warrior. And he had one more goal. It was to become a true berserk, a berserker, which is a werebear, a lycanthrope with strains of the earth sign persuasion. So he wanted to become a werebear. So I guess he had 4 different goals. But so for the plot hooks, I said, what if his old blacksmith came looking for him? What if that is his old master, his old blacksmithing master? Or what if he could find some star metal to forge? Or what if he could come across some lycanthropes, hopefully werebears, but maybe not. Maybe he thinks that they're werebears and he finds out they're werewolves, and he doesn't want any part of that. So that could be a great plot hook for the GM to work in. So, that's why I wrote down in my plot hook section. So in this way, you make it easy for the GM, because he's got his backstory to pull plot hooks out of. He's got your goals, so he can be prepared for you to push it on him. And he's got your suggested plot hooks, which can really help his writing process a lot. He doesn't have to use them, but he has them if he wants to. And the first 2 sections are mainly for you, so you can describe your character well, and so you can be in character and do your role playing well. And the backstory, of course, will help you make small talk, so will your goals. Because I tend to describe my characters in quite a bit of depth in terms of what they look like. Some of my players joke at me I'm taking too long, I'm describing too much depth. But I'm the kind of player who will ask about things in this kind of depth as well. Mike came in with this cavalier, and he said, "Oh yes, it's a man in riding leathers, and he has a musket with a fixed bayonet, slung over his shoulder, and he's on a brown horse." And I said, "Oh, okay. What does your musket look like? Is it like made of brass, or is it made of iron? Does it have a wheel lock or flintlock? You know, I asked him like, okay, you're wearing riding leathers. Are they like black leather, like brown, or more like a light tan? Do you have any other accoutrements? Like, does he have a dagger, or a sword, a cutlass? Does he have a mantle or a cloak on, a hood, a hat? What do his boots look like? You know, does he have a holy symbol? Is he wearing any jewelry? Does he have any scars on his face? What's his build look like? Is he a warrior? Is he brawny? Is he skinny? How tall is he? What's the color of his hair? What color are his eyes? What color is his hair, rather? You know, so I'm the kind of player who I ask all these questions because I want to picture that character in my mind. I'll ask about NPCs as well. Some GMs, I'll frustrate the hell out of them. I'll ask them about their NPCs in more depth than they expected, or I'll talk to them in more depth than they expected. You know, I'll run into somebody and I'll start talking to the main character and I'll ask them, you know, where are you from? Who were your parents? What was your childhood like? What gods do you worship? How did you come to be at your current position? You know, what do you think about the pharaoh? Or what do you think about the local high priest? You know, and some GMs are not prepared for that, so they get frustrated. And some GMs are not prepared and they improvise and they do great, though. You know. Yeah, I guess I will mention, this is a little off topic, but it's also a good idea if you're a GM, use the same kind of sheet, but also record, you know, their relationships, because I create a political web, which I'll probably do a video on, but record their relationships, allies, and enemies under that section as well, and do it for places as well. You know, what does this city look like? Appearance. What are the people like there? The personality of the city. What's the history of the city? Where is the city perhaps going? You know, because again, as a player, I'll frustrate the hell out of some people. My man Tyson was running the game for us, and I drove him nuts because it was like a traveling campaign. We'd go to a different city every other session. And I'd bug the shit out of him. I'd ask him, you know, what's the architecture look like? What's the population like? How are they dressed? What do they look like? Is their skin darker here or lighter? Are there more elves here or more dwarfs or more satyrs or more undines? You know, what's the population look like? What's the industry look like? Is there a foundry here? Are there any factories, a cattle yard, a granary? You know, so what's the economy of the city? What gods do they worship in this city? What's the layout? Is it well laid out, straight roads on a grid, or is it all a horrible cluster? Is there an old city wall or just one city wall? You know, how many gates are there? Is there a fortress or a castle or just a tower or a manor? So for every city we went to, I was asking all these kind of questions so I could picture the city and find interesting places to go to that my character would want to go to. You know, in that campaign, my character was a cleric, so I was driving him nuts with all the religious questions. What temples are there? How big are they? Who is the high priest? I'd go and talk to the high priest. You know, and also, my character was somewhat interested in the nobility. So, again, real in-depth about the castles, fortresses, the rulership, and the government. And, you know, unfortunately, Tyson didn't have a lot of this prepared. Sometimes, and now, to his credit, though, he did improvise it up, which you know, that's great. I've got in arguments with other GMs, stank-ass GMs. This guy, Jason, you know, we were in the city, and we're going to the temple. And I was like, oh, okay, we're going to the temple. What does the temple look like? And he's like, oh, it's a generic temple. I'm like, generic temple? And I'm like, what does a generic temple look like? Is it like white marble? Is it gray stone? Is it made of wood? I'm like, okay, whatever. Who's the temple dedicated to? What's the god of this temple? They're like, oh, it's a generic god. I'm like, okay, that's where I draw the line, buddy. It's not a generic god. Like, just pick a god out of your damn book, okay? Just at random. I don't care. But there needs to be a specific god. And he's like arguing with me. I was like, I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna quit this game, man. Well, I ended up quitting the game anyway. But that was just some terrible, terrible GMing. Because not only did he not have it prepared, but he wasn't even willing to improvise it into being. So at least my man Tyson improv'd everything in. You know, there was the one, and I'd still drive him nuts, and some of this improv stuff didn't really make sense, but it was there, so it's okay. You know, we got to the one city, and I asked how many gates there were, and he's like, oh, there's only one gate. And I'm like, one gate? This is I thought you said it was an enormous metropolis. It's the capital of the whole campaign setting. And he's like, oh, yes, it is. But they only have one gate. And I'm like, oh, my God. Like, the congestion that must be coming out of that gate. It's going to take us 4 hours to get through this gate. But that's fine. You know, you can work that into the story later. So yeah, that's all off topic. I probably rambled out a whole nother video there off topic. But I encourage everyone, create a character sheet that's independent of any system or setting. Make your character there first. And when you have them fully formed in your mind, flesh them out, stat them out, put them down into the system and the setting. And then go over those rules as well, though, and maybe you can get more flavor. So start with lots of flavor and then add more, instead of some people just start with none and then power game, so they end up with like a bad taste, like a horrible artificial chemical taste. So don't be that guy. Be the guy who's awesome, who can make small talk in character, who knows exactly what your character looks like, down to, you know, he has a dagger from Mir and a sword from Tylea, which are in different countries, in different settings, in different worlds, but perhaps you travel the multiverse, like only a planewalker can. So I'm going to be signing off now. Y'all have yourselves some good times out in YouTube land today.